They say your life doesn't fall apart in one grand explosion, it unravels, thread by thread. And sometimes the first one comes out when you're standing in a suit, under a chandelier, and reading your name crossed out with a black line on the guest list at your corporate party. And on the list next to my wife was not me but someone completely different. It was supposed to be a night of celebration. My firm had just landed a massive client, 6 months of impossible deadlines, late-night edits, skipped dinners. All worth it for this moment. I'd even trimmed my beard, polished the leather on my shoes, tied the tie twice to make sure the dimple sat just right. But that was before I saw it. There, at the front table by the velvet-roped entrance, the printed guest list lay neatly clipped to a silver easel. I don't know what made me walk over, call it instinct, or maybe pride. But the second my eyes locked onto that paper, the world went strangely quiet. Evan name, crossed out. A thick, deliberate slash of black ink. Not faded, not an accident. Like someone had wanted it to be noticed. And just beneath it, in clean, blue handwriting, Logan, VIP. My pulse stuttered. I blinked hard, as if my eyes were playing tricks on me, but the letters stayed right where they were. Logan. VIP. The word stabbed more than the name did. I didn't even know a Logan. Not one who should have been in my seat. Not one who should have replaced me. And definitely not one who should have been marked as VIP. I stood there for a second too long, heart slamming against my ribs, the air suddenly too thin. The couple behind me shifted impatiently, their laughter light and effortless. I forced myself to move aside, let them through. Smiled, even. Just like a man who hadn't just been quietly erased. You ever feel yourself becoming invisible in real time? Like you're there, you know you're there, but somehow, someone's decided the world works better without you in the frame. That's what it felt like. I took a slow step back from the easel, pulse still in my ears, and tried to gather myself. Maybe it was a clerical error. A typo. Some weird RSVP mix-up. But no, the way my name was crossed out. That wasn't a mistake. That was a decision. And whoever made it, had a pen in their hand. Not a heart. That thought lodged itself deep in my gut. I pulled at the cuff of my jacket, adjusting it out of habit, just to keep my hands busy. My knuckles had gone white without me realizing it. I felt that old heat rise in my chest, not anger, not yet, more like the first flare of disbelief. The kind that makes you check your phone, your texts, your memory. Anything that could tell you this wasn't what it looked like. But I hadn't missed anything. At least, I thought I hadn't. We were supposed to arrive together, Nora and I. She'd texted that morning, said she'd meet me there, some last-minute work thing. I didn't ask questions. I trusted her. God help me, I still trusted her when I walked through those doors. And maybe that's the part that stings most. Trusting someone enough to believe they'd never cross your name out, literally or metaphorically, only to realize they already had. I stood just outside the ballroom now, watching the soft flicker of chandelier light spill out across the marble floor. Music drifted from inside, jazz, something elegant, expensive, and every now and then, bursts of laughter echoed through the archway. My name wasn't in that room. But Logan's was. And suddenly, I needed to know who the hell Logan was. What would you do if you found yourself erased from your own story, and someone else had quietly stepped into your place? Because that's where this began. With ink. And a lie. And trust me, it didn't stop at the guest list. I walked into that ballroom with a champagne flute in my hand and 1,000 questions stuffed into my chest. On the outside, I looked like just another well-dressed guest, dark blazer, steady steps, half-smile aimed at anyone who made eye contact. But inside, I was scanning the room like a man who'd just heard a wrong note in a familiar song and couldn't unhear it. The place was stunning, gold trim along the ceiling, light catching in crystal glassware, soft jazz played live by a quartet in the corner. People moved in fluid circles, all polished charm and practiced ease. The air smelled like citrus and money. But I wasn't there for the hors d'oeuvres. I was searching. Not for Logan, not yet. For Nora. Because the only thing louder than the music was the silence she'd left in her wake. She was late. Or pretending to be. Or maybe she was already here, and simply hadn't told me. That thought curled tight in my gut. I passed by familiar faces, co-workers from marketing, one of the senior partners and his eternally bored-looking wife. A few nodded politely. No one mentioned the name tag. No one noticed I shouldn't have been alone. Maybe they didn't know. Or maybe they did, and didn't want to be the one to say it. I took a slow sip of champagne. It tasted dry, bitter, too cold. Just like the look on the assistant's face when I said I was with Nora. Her polite smile didn't even falter when she handed me a generic guest badge and moved on to the next person in line. Something was off. Not just the list. Not just the ink. The whole night was off-key, like the melody was right, but the rhythm was wrong. Like I'd stepped into a version of our life that had been carefully edited without me. I stood by one of the pillars lining the back of the room and let my gaze drift across the crowd. Laughter bounced off the walls. Champagne sparkled in tall glasses. Everything was exactly how it should be, unless you were looking close. Because when you look close enough, even the smallest fracture glints in the light. There was a group near the center of the room, 6 or 7 people from Nora's department. Her voice wasn't there. Not yet. But I watched them anyway. I'd learned that trick a long time ago: stay still, let the crowd shift, and eventually, you'll spot who you're looking for. It took 5 minutes. Then 10. And then, there she was. Not close. Not near the entrance. But tucked deeper into the room, where the light was softer and the crowd a little looser. Her back was to me, but I'd have known her silhouette anywhere. That red dress, the one she used to say was too much for work events. The one she'd only worn twice, both times when she wanted all eyes on her. I didn't move toward her. Not yet. I just watched. Because sometimes, distance tells you more than proximity ever could. She laughed, head tilted, hand brushing her hair behind her ear. Easy. Comfortable. Like nothing about this night was strange to her. Like she wasn't missing me at all. And that's when the question really lodged itself in my chest. Why didn't she want me here? Not forget. Not accidentally leave my name off. No, someone had taken a pen and made a choice. And she hadn't warned me. She hadn't apologized. She hadn't said a word. She just told me to meet her here. Like everything was fine. Like I was the one who needed to catch up. So I stood there, champagne in hand, heartbeat slowing into something colder. Watching the woman I married move through the crowd like she belonged there, like I was the outsider now. And all I could think was this: if you've ever been erased, you learn quickly, people don't need to scream to cut you out. Sometimes they just smile. Sometimes they just laugh. And sometimes, they just put someone else's name on the list. You know that feeling when you're watching something unfold and every part of you wants to look away, but you can't. That's where I was. By the bar, one hand on the counter, the other loosely holding that untouched glass of champagne, eyes locked on Nora. She was radiant. That part hadn't changed. Her dress hugged just enough, that deep red catching the light every time she moved. Her hair was pinned up the way she always wore it when she wanted to feel powerful, intentional. Not just beautiful, commanding. I used to be proud of that. But tonight, pride had given way to something quieter. More hollow. Because now I was noticing details I'd never wanted to look for. Like the way her body leaned just slightly, just enough, toward the man next to her. He wasn't touching her, not really. His hand rested on the back of her chair, fingers curled casually around the edge, like he belonged there. Like she didn't mind. He laughed at something she said. Then she laughed, too, not the forced kind, not workplace politeness. This one was real. Loose. Familiar. Too familiar. The man was maybe a couple inches taller than me. Late 30s, if I had to guess. Sharp jawline. The kind of haircut that came from a place with no price tags. He had the kind of ease that only came from confidence, or repetition. Like this wasn't new. Like they weren't new. I watched the way his hand brushed hers as he leaned in closer. The contact was light. So light, it could have passed for nothing, if you weren't looking closely. But I was. And what I saw wasn't accidental. It was permission. She didn't pull away. Didn't flinch. Didn't glance around to see if anyone was watching. Because she already knew who was, or who wasn't. Me. They looked good together. I can admit that now. That part stung more than I expected, not because I cared about appearances, but because I'd always thought we had a kind of rhythm, Nora and I. A private, unspoken language made of shared glances and half-smiles from across rooms like this. We were always in sync. But looking at her now, standing so close to someone else, laughing like nothing had ever belonged to me, it hit me hard. Because she hadn't just replaced my name on a list. She'd replaced the part of her life where I used to live. I took a slow breath, scanning the crowd, half expecting someone to notice. To say something. But no one did. The people who knew us, or claimed to, were busy chatting, laughing, swirling drinks. None of them looked twice. And maybe that's what really drove the knife in. Because whatever this was between her and that man, it wasn't some impulsive thing. It wasn't a misstep. It was polished. Practiced. And invisible to everyone but me. I set my glass down and kept watching from a safe distance, close enough to see, far enough not to be seen. I didn't even know his name yet. But I already hated him. And not because he stood where I once did, but because she let him. Because she chose him. Not in some heated, accidental moment. But but in 1,000 little, deliberate ways. She made space for him, in her smile, her schedule, her proximity. And now I was the one on the outside. I couldn't hear what they were saying. Didn't need to. Some things don't need words. You just know. And I knew this, that man wasn't a coworker. He wasn't a friend. He wasn't a +1. He was something else. Something more. And I was going to find out exactly what. I slipped away from the crowd without anyone noticing. It wasn't hard. People were too busy enjoying the music, the open bar, the curated illusion of success. All surface, all shine. That's what these events were built on. And that's what I'd always believed Nora hated about them. Until tonight. Until I saw her thriving in the very scene she used to roll her eyes at. Until I saw her standing beside him, dressed like a siren, not a strategist. There was a hallway to the left of the ballroom. It led to where the servers disappeared and re-emerged, balancing trays like clockwork. I waited until the coast was clear, then moved fast, past the staff-only sign, past the clatter of ice buckets and idle chatter in the catering kitchen. I didn't know what I was looking for. That's a lie. I did know. I wanted proof. Something beyond that crossed-out name. Something real. At the end of the hallway was a utility office, not locked, just partially closed. Inside, stacked boxes of table numbers, sign holders, backup programs. An industrial printer hummed low near the corner. And there, on the desk beneath a clipboard, a white binder marked, Event Logistics, Harper R. Of course. Of course her initials were on it. She didn't just attend this thing. She helped run it. I opened the binder with hands steadier than I felt. Inside, timelines, spreadsheets, RSVP lists, name assignments. I flipped carefully through each page until I landed on a section marked, Spouse and Partner Information. That's when the room tilted. Each entry had checkboxes beside it, standard form stuff. Spouse attending. Yes/no. Next to my name, Evan name, the box marked NO was ticked. In her handwriting. Neat. Firm. No hesitation in the ink stroke. Like she hadn't even paused. She'd excluded me. Deliberately. And worse. There wasn't a strike-through or scribble. She didn't forget to update it. She never planned to. I leaned against the desk as a low, invisible weight pressed hard into my chest. Not like a punch, not sharp. More like pressure from the inside. Like something hollowed out a little piece of me and left a vacancy. She didn't invite me. Not because of numbers. Not because she forgot. Not because she assumed I'd be busy. Because she didn't want me here. And she wanted him instead. That Logan on the list, the one who had my spot. It wasn't a mistake. It was a swap. Quiet. Calculated. Done in advance. I stared at the page, scanning it again, hoping I'd missed something. But there it was, her signature at the bottom of the RSVP section. Same smooth loop in the H, same confident slant. I closed the binder slowly and backed away, careful not to disturb anything. My head was buzzing, but not from the champagne. From clarity. This wasn't a slip. It was a shift. A cold, conscious one. And it had been set in motion long before I ever walked through those ballroom doors. I pushed open the hallway door and stepped back into the corridor. Back into the noise. Back into the lie. But now I wasn't confused anymore. I was focused. I didn't bring it up that night. Not the guest list. Not the binder. Not Logan. I just followed her home, 3 steps behind, quiet the whole ride. She didn't ask why I left early. Didn't even notice I was gone. She was buzzing, probably from the wine, or maybe from whatever rush she got being on the arm of a man who wasn't me. When we walked through the door, she kicked off her heels like always, draped her coat over the arm of the couch, and started humming that stupid melody she always hums when she's had just enough to drink. The one she used to sing in the kitchen while making dinner. The one that used to be ours. She poured herself a glass of water, sipped it slowly, leaned against the counter like it was any other Thursday night. No guilt. No tension. Just that casual indifference that feels more violent than any fight. I watched her from the hallway for a second longer than I should have. I could have said something, asked her how the event went, mentioned the crossed-out name, the checked box, the new VIP in my place. I could have laid the whole binder on the table and asked her to read it aloud. But I didn't. Because I was done giving her the chance to lie. I was done letting her decide what version of our life we got to live in. So I said nothing. And silence, I've learned, is a very sharp thing in the right hands. She glanced up when I passed through the room and smiled like she meant it. Said, "Long night," and didn't wait for an answer. I nodded once. Then went to shower. The water hit my skin, but the heat didn't reach me. My thoughts ran in loops, tight and fast. I wasn't angry, not in the explosive way people expect. I was something deeper. Something quieter. I was taking inventory. Of her lies. Of my blindness. Of every little shift I hadn't wanted to name. And they were everywhere. Once I started looking, it was obvious. Her phone, always face down now. On the counter. On the nightstand. Even when it buzzed. Especially when it buzzed. Our weekend plans. Suddenly booked. Seminars, retreats, team strategy, weekends. The kind that required overnight bags and new dresses. And she never once asked if I wanted to come along. Her tone. It had softened in the way a parent does when they're humoring a child. You work too hard, she'd say with a smile. You should sleep in Saturday. Don't worry about me. And I hadn't. Until now. That night, she fell asleep easily, wrapped in her robe, breathing slow and even, like she didn't have a thing to hide. I lay beside her, eyes wide open, watching the red digits of the clock crawl past midnight. I wasn't even sure what hurt more, that she was doing it, or that she was doing it so well. But one thing was clear now. This wasn't spontaneous. This wasn't some emotional misstep, some messy, sudden mistake she didn't know how to get out of. This was a plan. And if she thought I was going to fall apart and beg, she didn't know me at all. A week passed. And in that week, I became a man with new habits. I woke up earlier. Walked farther. Talked less. I didn't accuse, didn't poke. Just observed. That's the thing about silence, people fill it with their own guilt if you let it stretch long enough. Nora thought we were past whatever tension had floated in from that event. She even started humming again in the mornings, like we were some couple in a coffee commercial, all smiles and fresh starts. But I watched her more closely now. I watched how she smiled when her phone buzzed. Watched how she tilted the screen just slightly away when she typed. Watched how she laughed alone in the living room at texts I never saw. She was careful. I'll give her that. But not careful enough. Because the cloud never forgets. One night, when she was in the shower and I was supposedly finishing an email, I opened our shared photo account. The one we hadn't touched in months, back when we used to sync vacation pictures, birthday clips, the occasional blurry selfie of us wrapped in sunlight and sweatshirts on lazy Sundays. I scrolled past the old stuff fast. I knew it by heart. But it was the new folder I didn't recognize. No title. No tags. Just hidden, buried under archived backups. And inside, photos. Recent ones. She hadn't posted them. Hadn't shared them. But they were there, pulled automatically from her phone, quietly uploaded in the background by an app she'd probably forgotten was still running. The first one was harmless. Just Nora in a restaurant booth, smiling slightly, wine glass in hand. The second hit harder. Logan. Sitting across from her. Leaned in. Mid-laugh. Her hand in the bottom corner of the frame. It wasn't a group dinner. There were no colleagues. No clients. Just the two of them. The third photo. That one sealed it. It was a wide shot, the kind you ask a waiter to take for you when you want to remember the night. Logan had his arm behind her on the seat, not quite touching but close. Her head leaned in a little. Eyes soft. Comfortable. And outside the window behind them. A sign I recognized. Not from our city. Not even from our state. I stared at it for a long time, eyes locked on the street lamp glowing in the corner of the image, the faint blur of a small-town diner logo we'd driven past once, years ago, on our way to the lake. That place was a 5-hour drive. She said she was at a local conference. She packed a laptop. Left me a kiss on the cheek. Promised she'd call that night, but said the schedule was tight. Turns out, it wasn't tight at all. It was just private. And I wasn't part of it. I sat back, letting the weight of that photo settle in. Not the betrayal, I already felt that. What hit me now was the scale, the planning, the ease with which she carved out entire pieces of her life and lived them like I didn't exist. They weren't hiding anymore. They'd just stopped pretending I mattered. And somewhere, beneath all the rage and disbelief, there was something colder forming in me now. Something focused. Because this wasn't about jealousy. It wasn't even about heartbreak anymore. It was about knowing. And once you know, you can't go back. Some people call a lawyer when things fall apart. I called someone different. His name was Reed. Found him through a referral I wasn't supposed to have, a friend of a friend who handled sensitive matters. No flashy website. No late-night commercials. Just a business card with a phone number, no email, and one word in small print underneath, discretion. When I met him, he didn't waste time with small talk. Wore a wool coat even though it was warm outside, and kept his sunglasses on the entire time we sat across from each other in the back booth of a diner that reeked of burnt coffee and lemon-scented sanitizer. "I'm not looking to catch her in the act," I said quietly, fingers tapping the rim of my mug. Reed didn't blink. "Then what do you want?" I looked him dead in the eye. "I want the full picture." He gave the faintest nod, like he appreciated the honesty. "Paper trail." "Yes." "Photos." "If they exist." "Surveillance." "If it's legal." He lifted one eyebrow. "And if it's not?" I didn't flinch. "Then don't tell me." He cracked a small smile, the first I'd seen. "You're not like most guys who walk into this." Maybe I should have been. Reed pulled out a small notepad and pen. "Names. Nora name. And Logan." I hesitated. "Don't know his last name." "You will." He didn't promise miracles. Just truth. And honestly, that was enough. Because I'd spent the last few weeks in a fog, watching, analyzing, doubting myself. Trying to figure out where the lies began and where the truth ended. But I was tired of guessing. I needed someone who could pull the veil back without emotion, without hesitation, without asking why. Someone who wasn't in this to fix my marriage or make me feel better. Just someone who knew how to find what was hiding. Before we parted, Reed slid a small burner phone across the table. "This is how I'll reach you. No texts. Voice only. When I call, you pick up. No matter where you are." I nodded. Took the phone and tucked it into my coat pocket. He stood up, slipped his sunglasses back on, and left without another word. I sat there for a few more minutes, staring out the window as the sun dipped behind the buildings, casting long shadows on the sidewalk. I felt a strange calm settle over me, not peace. Something else. Control, maybe. Because for the first time in a while, I wasn't reacting. I wasn't guessing. I was moving. And if Nora thought I was still sitting in the dark, still unsure of what was real and what wasn't, she was about to learn how quiet a man can be when he's done playing the fool. The call came 4 days later. No preamble. No small talk. Just Reed's voice, low and steady. "Got what you're looking for. You might want to sit down." I was in the park, my usual morning walk, headphones in, pretending the world hadn't flipped. I sat on a bench by the water, phone pressed to my ear, staring at a pair of ducks gliding across the surface like nothing could touch them. "Go ahead," I said. "There's been travel," he started. 3 trips in the last 2 months. One of them matched the weekend she told you she was at a work seminar. I didn't say anything. Just listened. It was easier that way. I tracked expenses. Hotel charges on her card in a town 2 states over. Same hotel Logan checked into. Different rooms, but only by number. Adjacent. Same check-in. Same checkout. He paused. Photos from the lobby security cam. I've got timestamps. They didn't arrive together. But they left together. The wind picked up. I barely felt it. "You said 3 trips." "Yeah. That's just recent movement. The deeper dig." He hesitated. "It goes back farther than that." "How far?" 7 months. First sighting, a company retreat. She said it was all business, right? I closed my eyes. "Yeah. Photos say otherwise. There's one from the hotel bar. Another by the pool. Third at a wine tasting they weren't scheduled for. You weren't there." He was. I clenched my jaw until it ached. "Keep going. They use a burner number for messages. But she slipped once, texted him from her regular phone 6 weeks ago. I got the log. Nothing explicit, but the tones, familiar." He cleared his throat. "And they're careful now. No socials. No selfies. But her phone still geotags. That's how I pulled the restaurant photos. They've been dining out at places not listed on expense reports. Private bills. No splits. No clients." He let that settle. I looked out over the water. A kid threw breadcrumbs into the pond a few yards away. The ducks shifted course, swimming faster toward the easy meal. "She's not just cheating," I said quietly. "She's living something." Reed didn't respond. He didn't need to. Because I wasn't surprised. Not anymore. Disappointed. Yes. Shattered. Maybe. But surprised. Not after everything I'd seen. "I'll send you the folder," he said. "Photos, receipts, timelines. It's clean. Undeniable." "Understood." He paused. "What do you want to do with it?" Funny thing, I didn't know yet. That wasn't the part I'd figured out. "I'll let you know," I said. "For now, I just need to sit with it." "All right. Be smart, Evan." Click. The line went dead. I sat there for a long time, phone resting on my knee, eyes fixed on the lake. 7 months. That's what hit hardest. Because I'd been there, in the same house, same bed, making dinner, folding laundry, thinking we were just in a rough patch. Telling myself she was tired. That the spark would come back. Turns out, she wasn't tired. She was already gone. And what I felt now, it wasn't fury. It was something quieter. More dangerous. Resolve. Because now, I knew. And when you know, the balance shifts. She still hadn't noticed. And that was the most revealing part of all. I'd seen the pictures. Read the logs. Traced the lies backward like breadcrumbs dropped on a dark path. I knew how long it had been going on. I knew where they'd gone, when they'd met, what she'd worn, even what she'd ordered at that overpriced place with the handwritten menus in Cincinnati. But she kept acting like everything was fine. Like I was still in the dark. That night, she made dinner. Roasted vegetables, grilled chicken, wine she usually saved for guests. She smiled across the table like we were still on track, like we were some couple pulling through a storm. Like I was the one who needed patience. I watched her pour herself a second glass. Watched her phone buzz face down. Watched her ignore it with just the right amount of practiced ease. She didn't ask about my day. Didn't notice that I hadn't worn my wedding ring in 4 days. Didn't catch the way I'd stopped using "we" in sentences. Or how I didn't tell her about the client who signed with us that morning. She used to care about that sort of thing. Now she just filled the air with updates about projects I wasn't invited to, dinners I wasn't meant to attend. She talked about an upcoming retreat in Chicago. Just a quick one, she said, smiling into her wineglass. Mostly lectures. Boring stuff. I nodded. Sounds important. She glanced up, maybe expecting sarcasm. But I gave her nothing. Just steady, calm eyes and a mouth that didn't curl in either direction. The less I reacted, the more confident she became. That's how it works with people who lie well, they interpret your silence as permission. But I wasn't giving permission. I was just timing the exit. Earlier that day, I'd moved half of our savings into a separate account. Not in secret, just quietly. The account had my name on it, and I'd used it once years ago before we got married. It was still active. Still legal. Just like me, it had never been closed. I'd already scheduled an appointment with a financial advisor. Next week, I'd be closing out the joint credit card. Replacing locks. Drafting a clean exit. Nothing explosive. Nothing dramatic. Just deliberate. Like hers had been. Because here's the truth they never teach you, betrayal doesn't always need a storm. Sometimes, it arrives like a slow tide. Soft, quiet, persistent. And before you know it, the floor shifted beneath you and your feet aren't touching anything solid. So you stop swimming for her. You start swimming for shore. That night, after dinner, she kissed me goodnight. Light. Habitual. Lips barely brushed mine. I said nothing. She didn't ask why. She assumed it was exhaustion. Maybe work stress. Maybe distance I'd eventually close again. But what she didn't realize was this, the distance was no longer hers to measure. I watched her walk down the hallway, phone still in hand, probably flipping it face up once she hit the corner, checking for his name. Laughing at his messages. Planning the next lie. I didn't follow her. Didn't ask questions. Just rinsed the dishes and stared out the kitchen window at a sky that was finally, honestly, dark. And in that quiet, I smiled to myself. Because she still thought I was waiting. Still thought I was holding on. Still thought I hadn't seen the guest list. They say the opposite of love is hate. But that's not true. It's indifference. And that's what I gave her now. Not to punish. Not to provoke. Just to detach, clean, quiet, irreversible. I stopped wearing my ring. Left it on the bathroom counter one morning like it meant nothing. Like it was just another item that didn't fit anymore. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did, and chose not to ask. Either way, I didn't offer a reason. I stopped waiting for her texts, too. The check-ins, the running late messages, the half-hearted emojis. I used to read between the lines. Now I didn't even open them. She was used to me being predictable, reliable in all the ways that make betrayal easy. But the version of me she'd built her excuses around had gone quiet. Not angry. Just absent. I started leaving early. Didn't say where I was going. Didn't offer timelines. Sometimes I'd walk for hours, headphones in, listening to the same songs on repeat. Songs we used to play in the kitchen. Songs she ruined without realizing. Other times I'd sit at a bookstore cafe, sipping coffee, staring at strangers. Watching lives that weren't mine, couples that weren't pretending, and wondering how many of them were just as hollow as we'd become. When I came home, I didn't ask what she'd been doing. I didn't scan her face for clues or press her for answers. I didn't care if she stayed late at strategy meetings or if Logan's name accidentally slipped into conversation. I just nodded. And went about my night. She began to notice. Little things. The fact that I didn't reach for her hand when we crossed the street. That I left the lights off when I got home late. That I didn't say good night, just moved past her, like she was a painting I'd stopped admiring. She tried to fill the silence, at first. Asked me how work was. If I wanted to try that new place near the park. Brought home my favorite coffee without saying a word, just slid it onto the counter like a peace offering I never asked for. I thanked her. Polite. Neutral. But nothing more. Her smile faltered a little more each day. Because people like Nora, people who play the long game, who plot carefully, quietly, in whispers and guest lists and travel receipts, they don't expect silence to be louder than confrontation. They expect rage, begging, maybe even forgiveness. But silence, that terrifies them. Because silence means you've made your decision. And you're just waiting for the right moment to execute it. She started watching me now. Carefully. Like she was trying to figure out where I'd gone, even though my body still stood in the same kitchen, slept in the same bed, moved through the same house. But the man she used to control, he was gone. Replaced by someone who no longer needed explanations. Just closure. And that was already on its way. It was our anniversary. She'd probably forgotten. Or maybe she hadn't, maybe she was planning something artificial. A dinner reservation. A text with a heart emoji. Something small enough to seem sweet but not big enough to feel guilty about. That's how she worked, controlled doses of affection to keep the illusion alive. But I had my own plans. Simple. Final. I was up before the sun, before she even stirred. Packed a small carry-on with quiet hands, careful not to let the zipper wake her. I didn't need much, just the essentials. A few changes of clothes, my passport, the folder Reed had given me. Not because I planned to use it against her. Just because I never wanted to forget what clarity looked like. The air in the house was heavy with sleep, still scented faintly with whatever perfume she'd worn the night before. I stood for a long moment in the doorway of our bedroom, watching the slow rise and fall of her shoulders under the comforter. She looked peaceful. She wasn't. But that was no longer my concern. Downstairs, I placed the envelope carefully on the kitchen table, where we used to drink coffee together, plan weekends, talk about nonsense like grocery runs and holiday trips. The same table where, years ago, she'd surprised me with a homemade breakfast and a ring box. Funny how full circle things come when you stop pretending. Inside the envelope. One note. 7 words. I saw the guest list. I know. Next to it, the spare set of house keys. Nothing else. No dramatic monologue. No printed photos. No accusations or questions or, we need to talk. She'd made a choice. I had too. The cab pulled up just as the sun broke across the skyline. I stepped outside with a strange calm in my chest. Not peace, not yet, but the kind of stillness that comes when you finally stop trying to fix what was never yours to hold together. As we turned the corner, I didn't look back. Not at the house. Not at the city. Not at the life I was leaving behind. Halfway to the airport, my phone buzzed once. Her name. No message, just a missed call. Then another. And another. I didn't answer. Didn't need to. She'd wake up. See the envelope. The keys. The silence. She'd remember what day it was. She'd start connecting dots. First confusion. Then denial. Then the cold, unavoidable truth. And this time, there'd be no speech from me. No final scene. No room for her to twist the story. She wouldn't get to spin it. Wouldn't get to play the part of the misunderstood wife, the lonely woman who slipped into something because she thought I was already gone. Because this time, I was. Truly, finally, gone. You ever leave without slamming the door? Not out of weakness, but because it's the strongest thing you can do. That's what this was. Clean. Quiet. Unforgettable. And if this hit you somewhere personal, you're not alone. Drop a comment, share your story, or just say, I've been there. Because walking away isn't losing. Sometimes, it's the only way to win.